He is an internationally recognized scientist who lived and worked for over 27 years across Africa in agriculture, health, and environmental research and capacity development. As director of the Africa Biological Control Center of the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in Nigeria, he conceived and implemented the highly successful biological control program against the cassava mealybug and the green mite that saved the cassava crop, the staple of 200 million Africans, and averted Africa's worst ever food crisis. For this achievement, he was the first Swiss to receive the World Food Prize in 1995. Please welcome Millennium Institute CEO and co-founder and president, Biovision Foundation, Dr. Hans Herren.
Okay, all right. Please welcome Dr. Hans Herren. Once again, makofi tafadhali, a big round of applause.
Thank you. Honorable Minister of Agriculture, State Minister of Agriculture from Uganda, Mr. Kulaga, a representative from the African Union, Agriculture, Rural Development, David, who just left from the Biovision Africa Trust, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, it's a pleasure to be here again. And I'm not sure how many times I will be coming. I really hope that we create a movement which I think you can see when we heard the numbers before is growing, which is very, very satisfactory. And so, of course, a quick one. How many people have been here 4 years ago? Wow, a lot of new people. So that shows that I think we are having some sort of a mass movement developing, and that's probably to the credit of the ones who came here before and going back home and raised more friends and colleagues to work in agroecology, in the transformation of the food system at home, but also food system beyond. So I'm very glad to see so many people here, many friends who have been working hard in making sure that our food system really get the needed transformation. So I was asked to discuss about the pathways, and what are the pathways forward? And I think that if we want to arrive in another place, we need to change direction. And I think that's an important issue, that many people actually don't change the way they think and think that they can change something. So again, also here, I think we need to ensure that we are changing the way we think, not only the way we act. And we need to think, at least one thing, is much more in systems. And that's why we started to talk about food system. That's not that very old. I think we probably first used that term in the big report on agriculture, which has been published 14 years ago, where we actually made the statement that the business as usual is not in place anymore, so we cannot do that. And that agroecology is actually the way we need to be going. And again, even then, people were asking, well, what is agroecology? Again, I think it's been defined way before that, before 2009, when we wrote that big report. But I think it made its way. And I can only congratulate what's happening in the minister here for Uganda, what's happening in Uganda. I think I'm quite amazed by the numbers, what you told us, what's happening. And I think this is what needs to happen almost everywhere, in every country. It is not. Maybe we can mention Senegal, where again, agroecology is becoming national policy. And unless this happens, all the work we do down below will go somewhere. Okay, so we are reaching 10,000 farmers, 100,000 farmers. We need to reach millions. This is the thing. We need to go really much faster, because yesterday, again, there was an article about our climate change. We have exactly 7 years to make the big changes. 7. We're never going to manage, not the way things are happening right now. What does that mean? What does that mean for agriculture and the food system? What does that mean for food security and nutrition security? So I think we are on the right path, at least with our contribution from the food system towards trying to solve the climate change problem. But we cannot do it alone, unless the policy environment changes, unless in particular the investment politics changes. Now when I look, and you can look at this thing here, all right, they're partners. Does anyone have real money to do something? Anyone of them real money to make change? To help governments who actually want to do something? No. The big ones are missing here. The big ones are for Africa, the African Development Bank. I heard this morning that actually they're having a meeting in Dakar to discuss fertilizer, not organic fertilizer. So that's why the millions, the hundreds of millions are being dished out to government to actually continue on the old direction, the green revolution. It's still not dead. Some people may have changed the name in their acronym, but it hasn't changed anything. Oh, that's the wrong presentation, sorry. That's the one for tomorrow. That's what I was getting worried about before. So we need to really harness, I think, the money where it is. The World Bank, the regional development banks, the EU. There's some changes happening, but 7 years, I mentioned it before, we have only 7 years to make those changes. So I think, we really have to start to think harder on how do we get those efforts which are being made by some governments and support them. Again, huge amount of good work. I mean, I just based on what's going on out there. Amazing, amazing how much work people are putting into the transformation of the food system. But again, I think until we get really into the high gear, we are still in first gear. Engine is running fast. We have to go into overdrive. And again, fairly quickly. And that can only happen if all the work which is done by the NGOs, by the private sector, who has actually seen that the future is not in the old one, but in the new one, and in particular the investments are made in this transformation. That's where I think we need to put our attention and make sure that to help countries like Uganda, I mean, these are leaders. They are models for many others. You signed the AGroecology coalition. Kenya has not yet. At least I didn't see the flag among them, unfortunately. Okay, here we are. So again, I'm going to fly over some slides fairly quickly because I want to, again, make a few points or important points as we move. So again, there's a recognition system is not working. We have a health problem, nutrition problem. We have more, I think, 1.1 billion people today actually are suffering from some sort of malnutrition or food insecurity, up from 750 million a few years ago. So how is it? After all the talk and all the reports we have done, we're not going anywhere. How is it? And we'll see actually who is standing in the way of actually making the changes, which many organizations have been promoting over time. Somebody mentioned, is that better? Somebody mentioned earlier about the planetary boundaries. Because the system as it is today, again, we are going way overboard in some of the key areas of the planetary boundaries. These are the resources we have, we need to actually maintain and to regenerate. So that's why we talk about regenerative agriculture. You've seen that before too. And I think the only way we can change this is by doing a different type of agriculture. And the black dots on the second picture I just opened up is the impact of agriculture in those red zones. Agriculture, not even any other thing. So unless agriculture and the production base is changed, which includes eventually the consumption, we looked at agroecology, nothing will change. But there's a lot of interest behind it. And what we also need to understand is why are we in a bind right now? We're in a huge bind right now because in the past we had ecosystem services. Everybody talks about ecosystem services, and now many of you try to re-establish them in the field, in the neighboring area of the fields, because we had pollination. 60% of the good food in your plate needs pollinators. What did you do here in East Africa with the locusts? You sprayed all the bees to death, including the locusts, but I think there were other solutions. Just to say, we need to pay attention. Natural pest control, it's there. We don't just have to maintain it, we can help it. Water and nutrient cycling in the soil. Dead soils, more than 50% of the global agricultural land is actually degraded to a point where it's difficult to regenerate life into it. And you know who is all behind that, right? I don't have to, even the farmers, family farmers, smaller farmers are being replaced. Oh, too fast. Because people want to make money. So the ecosystem services have been transformed into goods you can sell. And so here we are in a system where basically it's not using nature to do what, to nourish us, but really to make money. So again, cheap food, quick money everywhere, that's where we are. So this reductionism ends up, and do you want Africa to look like this? Well, we are on the way in some countries. Okay, so this is just large-scale monocrops. And that's what actually makes the food cheap. Cheap only in brackets, okay? Because we know that somebody else is paying all the other costs. And the somebody else is you, we, everybody. And so this cannot go on. And yesterday, flying here, I took this picture over the Arbedaers. And you can see how the farms are creeping up the hill. A lot of small farms. Again, there's no future in this either. We need to make sure we can use better our open land and make sure that the farmers actually have a proper income without having to go climb up the mountain to get a piece of land. And then the results of all this is soil erosion, more drought. And so if we don't build a resilient system through regeneration of our soils, our biodiversity, we never get out of this cycle, never. But again, we know how to do it. So again, why are we not really getting it from not only bottom up, that's why we're doing this, but also from top down. Minister, you're doing the right thing. Again, we have been saying this for a while now, okay? So why are we not doing it? I'm not sure where this thing is to be clicking, but maybe here? Okay. So I'm also a member of that panel of experts on food system, EPES Food, and we publish reports all the time, all kind of interesting reports together with other organizations. And this one here, what I want to show here, what's important is, again, is that both the subsistence agriculture as well as more the industrial agriculture model need to change. And where do they go? To a diversified agroecological system or farming, a regenerative system. Okay, so we want diversified. So again, so one thing is we need to relocalize, diversify, reduce the external inputs, and also build knowledge. That's on the side of this industrial model, which is being promoted in many, many places as the only solution to produce cheap food for all these poor people in the world, which happen actually to be the farmers. So how is it that we need food, right? Without food, you guys are going to pass out soon if I continue talking too long. And who produces the food is the farmers. And why then are the farmers the poorest in society? The least respected. The lawyers, the doctors, everybody makes a lot of money. And the farmers who provide the essential for our lives are the poorest. And this is around the globe. It doesn't matter where you go and look. In many places, they are really poor, almost die. In other places, they are helped via subsidies. But why do we need to subsidize food? Because we have an economic system which is upside down. So we need to actually look, and probably the main screw we have to turn to get the system where it's supposed to be is not really only in agriculture or the food system. It is the economic system we have. And unless we change this, unless we change what's in the GDP and we drop the GDP as a measure of development, we're not going to change things. So again, we need to see where are we going. So fortunately, people have been thinking. In academia, like Mr. Glisman, who has done the 5 levels of agroecology, then at FAO, finally, they came out with the 10 elements and actually adopted agroecology as one of, that's the problem, as one of the way to go forward. It has to be the way forward. We need to stop thinking that we can do many things at the same time in parallel. That's what people have been trying. We spend way too much money still on the wrong side of the equation. So when are we going to change? We know what to do. I won't go into the details because you're going to hear plenty of it this afternoon and later. But again, we know what the guiding principles are. And I like to go back to this one here because there's a lot of co-option of our term of agroecology, organic, name it, okay? Within the black circle, this is agroecology. It includes the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: the environment, society, and the economy. If you look what's been promoted in many places, they're only in there a little bit, or maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And we have to be careful with this, because one, for example, climate-smart agriculture is again a Trojan horse to do the old thing over again under a new name. So be aware, when people come and say, oh, we're going to do certain things, ask them exactly, are we covering the 10 elements of agroecology? Or the 13 principles, which have been mentioned earlier by Emma also. So that's, I think, we need to be always aware of. And we have processes, we know exactly how to do that, basically to go from where we are, the big dark curve, to move it over towards sustainability. And the example of this, and where we're going to take our science and the knowledge of the farmers, is the green curve. And we want the green to grow all the way to the top. So that's how we're going to move forward. We can't make the change overnight. We have screwed up the system so badly that it will take years to actually do it again. One example, and I'm sure you all have heard about, is the example of Sri Lanka. When the president wakes up in the morning and then he's got all the economic problems and decides to now no more fertilizer and pesticide, today we're finished, disaster. And then they blame it on organic farming. No, it will take time to restore our soils, our genetic diversity, also to restore farmers' knowledge. And we also have to restore the knowledge of the people out there, the general public. Because in the end, who makes the choices? What they're going to buy in the supermarket and what the farmer can sell to the supermarket. So you can see that we have to start to think in system. And if you go agroecology, you help the system. More jobs, better jobs, you can have the rural development supported. And we think the whole chain of activities in the value chain, but that you do that with agroecological practices, not with industrial agriculture, where basically you have your machines running out of the office somewhere by remote control. But, okay, this was 2016, we have published a report where we say, okay, what is the problem here? Who is blocking us? The concentration of power. You all heard about this, how many few people or company own the food system today. Cannot go on. So these people need to move over and away. I'm telling you that most people in the agro business, most of them we don't need. They are the impediment in making the change. Because these are the ones who go to the minister or to the ministers, they go to the permsecs, they go to the donors and peddle the fact that, oh, you know, we're going to need more fertilizer, more pesticides to feed the world. And now I'm emphasizes feed the world. We, in agroecology, in organic, we nourish the people. So this is a big difference, okay? Now, unless we start to think about what's going on here and what's the impact, you know, who controls that system, we're not going to move, because at every turn, we're going to have a fight with somebody who doesn't want the change because they have vested interests. So again, I think we have to really be aware of this. An example of this concentration of power from right here. EPES Food, Biovision Foundation, and the Institute of Development Studies in the UK, we did a study, we call it the money flow. If you don't know how the money comes and goes, you're never going to change anything, right? Because in the end, money runs the world, we know that. So, if we look at what AGRA, or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, have been funding here in East Africa, or even beyond East Africa, we took the example of Kenya. So when in the middle, so remember the colors are the levels of agroecology. So when you look, for example, what is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funding in Kenya? It's really much in the industrial agriculture. Then you go and look what actually the Kenya government is funding from its own budget in agri-research, okay? So very little there in the green. And then, okay, I'm Swiss, so take this with a grain of salt. What is the Switzerland funding? So this is the trend where we want to follow. So again, there are some countries in Europe, Germany and a few others, who actually make an effort in trying to move the money over into research and development, implementation of agroecology practices. So it can happen, but as long as we have the stuff over there, it's not going to happen. And when I go to ag research, I say, we don't need a little change. It has to be radical, 100% of the money has to switch, finished. As long if we discuss the little crumbs and all this, or some crumbs for organic, some crumbs for agroecology, we cannot move. It has to be a radical change. If not, I'm going to be here again in 4 years, tell you the same old stuff I did 4 years ago. Some of the pictures you may have seen before. So this report has been published, I think, last week, right? Or about 10 days ago by FAO. Amazing, fantastic. Everybody's going to look for it, okay? And download it. Because now, what's happening here, we are looking at the connection between those 10 elements. And they have looked at, again, where can we actually apply the lever to get the changes done? You can apply them in many different places. You have only to remember, everything else is connected to that one. And some move positive, and some may move negative. So you have to really understand the system. And what's not there yet, or maybe in the future, is to look actually at the total system. Coming? Okay. It's much more complicated. But for that, we have tools. We know how to do it. We can use these tools in a matter of no time for each country. And we can define exactly what exact policy will actually make the change, make you move where you want to move. And what do you want to move? Mr. Minister, you mentioned it here. And if you look at it, so agriculture and the food system, not only a few, every one of those goals, every one of them. You can go and look around, you can move every one of them. And we have done it. Here, we show that business as usual in terms, if you continue to do the same thing as you did before to meet the SDGs, you don't change any policies, let's say in agriculture, okay, you're gonna get only 26% of your SDG realized by 2030. If you put in agroecology scenarios, You move this to 34%. Still not great, but you can see how things move. And they move, how much more they move in certain sectors, in certain goals. So it can be done. And you can actually calculate it. You can put numbers on it. You know exactly how much money of my total budget do I have to put in different areas to actually get the best possible results. So are people doing it? It's very hard, very difficult. Although the tools are there, very hard. Côte d'Ivoire did it, for example, and others. So what are these pathways? So these pathways need to go through the SDGs. And if we do the right thing there, we're going to actually get back in the green zone in our planetary boundaries. And so that's basically the way I think we need to move forward. And we have the SDGs. Everybody agreed on them. We don't have to go negotiate anything about this. Why come up with something new when we've got something actually that we can use? And we should. 2030 is around the corner. So what do people do now? Oh, let's think about 2045. Why don't we think about what we can do right now? And get things, the radical changes, investments done like immediately. So again, moving forward with new policies, co-creation of knowledge, I mentioned it before already, nothing new. Application of novel agroecology technologies. There are many out there. There's many things we can actually do right now. Collaboration and partnerships across the discipline in the food system. Again, from A to Z, not just one little piece. We need to strengthen and do the marketing. And when I see what's out there, yes, there are many products. But again, we need to really help them to reach the market, the people. So we have to work also on the consumer side, a whole lot more than we have done so far. Because consumers, they are too much in love with their wallet. So when they go to the supermarket, well, that chicken here is organic, but it costs a bit more than the other one, I'll take the other one. Doesn't add up. People need to know that the non-organic or sustainably produced chicken is poison. In the medium, long term, it's killing us, all of us. So that's what people don't know. So that's why a way forward there is to start to think about true cost accounting. And I believe that this may be the best lever we have to make the change from the demand side. And if the demand changes, the production will change very fast also. And make sure that people and the farmers are paid properly for their work, for their labor. I keep saying that the carpenter, when he sells a table, she gets her money back plus the payment, plus the salary. The farmers have to wait for government subsidies to actually make a decent living. That cannot be the system we want to go forward. And again, we have this coalition here, I think, which is a very good effort, which will help agroecology moving forward. So again, I'd just like to see some other big wallet there to help really support the transformation and the transition. Thank you.